Okay, hello to everybody joining the live stream. This is a meeting about language completeness and consistency, and we have a variety of topics here. So the first topic is progress about progress.
Correct. So you asked for a progress report on the progress indicator project. So here, this is basically the report. So we have a bunch of functions listed there that have been updated and a number that are in the process of being updated. Then we have a bunch more of smaller ones that are on sort of the list to be updated. And maybe at this point, we should just be filing bugs and telling people, hey, because I don't think it's reasonable to ask Julio to go and update everybody else's code. So we probably should just be filing bugs and telling people, hey, you need to do this.
Question, how many of these are enhanced progress and how many of them are just a blue thing with a progress bar going across?
Many of them are just a blue thing even without the bar. For example, if you open the data parklets, you see...
do I need prototype build or do I need head branch build?
No, I mean, this is stuff is in the head, but the point is that you have stuff like mortality data, and when you start it up, it says initializing mortality data. That will just need to switch to the new, basically, panel layout. I mean, it will happen automatically.
Has it happened or has it not? I mean, okay, so for example...
Not for every data parklet.
Okay, so if I say weather forecast data, I don't know what it's going to give me, but if I just do it...
You give it like, a city, give it Boston or whatever. Okay. Oh, that was so too fast. Too fast.
Do a state.
We're waiting. No progress.
I think this one has a delay of 5 seconds. It does ticks of 5 seconds. That's a choice of the developer. They can update the update interval. But for example, in this case, you saw it for like 10, 5. For sometimes in Europe, I get like 20, 25 seconds. So it's you see it for quite a bit of time, depending on what you ask for.
But have we got standards for how long to make people wait before they see things?
The default is 2 seconds. I believe that weather forecast data is doing something else before downloading.
Okay.
Well, I mean, there was, as I recall, there was something in the way that they are batching their data that made it difficult to sort of get really fine-grained, information. Something like video processing. It's sort of much more detailed, right? I mean, there they have, right? There's phase 1 and phase 2. If you're exporting to an MP4 and sort of, I guess the first one doesn't have a time estimate and the second one does.
Can I ask a question? What if I look for functions that have time constraint as an option?
Mm-hmm.
If I say select in names star, I mean, I think somebody else could do this. Let's see, what do I want to say? Member queue options of hash, comma, time constraint. What did I get wrong here? Does options not allow you to take a symbol?
It may not. Yeah, right. Oh, right. Options interprets a string as the name of a stream, right? So like std out or std in.
Ah, somebody has the right code. Thank you, Lou. Oh my God, look at that crazy, crazy thing.
Right, because it's evaluating everything and if necessary, auto-loading it.
it's not working to do, well, it did finally work. A string of task objects is expected instead of $failed. Okay, some random bug here. Okay, so these are good places. I mean, like full simplify, do we have a chance of giving anything there? That would be very nice.
We don't have any sort of time estimate, right?
No, but we do have a what we're doing this, doing that, doing the other thing. Because if all we did was say running this, ... running that, ... the thing will not look like it's just dumb as a stone.
Right. There are, I mean, I guess, well, I think there are certainly some things we could do with full simplify.
What is geo-identify? Is that new?
No, that's goes to 10 point something, I think.
Yeah, it has been there from the very beginning in 10 from 10.
What
it's one
is
of
it?
the nearest friends. With
Right,
geo-identify, geo within queue.
Like you give it a location and it tells you what's there.
Oh! I was thinking it was going to take some picture, like that neural net. Never mind.
Like image identify, right?
Yes, sorry. Okay. There's some weird things on this list, which might be worth looking at. I mean, including geo-identify itself. I don't know whether any of these things can be, instrumented.
I think they could, yeah.
Yeah, I think the geo ones can. I mean, the thing.
But I think it's. Go ahead. Sorry. I think it's highly useful to be able to say, "I'm doing this," even if you don't have an estimate of when it'll be finished. See what I'm saying?
Yep.
Because it's a sign of life.
Right.
So, okay. So hopefully the framework can support that and we'll go forward in that direction.
Yep.
Okay, terrific. And graphic design wise, we're all done there, right?
I think so. Julia, I mean, you're making some refinements, but I think those are all on the back end, not on the visual end.
Right now, only on the back end.
Right. Although that frames bug that bit you is in the process of being fixed, so you may be able to improve the appearance a bit once that's fixed.
Yeah, I have a refactor of the whole interface, which makes it a lot more modular. So as soon as I have a little extra time, I'll meet with Billy. And I know, Billy, I promise we meet with you, just didn't have time yet, to basically create an interface which is a lot more customizable. So design can just go wild and fine tune paddings and sizes and stuff. But I guess, the overall appearance is set now. It's just a matter of incremental refinements in like the little spacing things and stuff like that.
Okay. I mean, question: do we have a user level access to this framework?
Not yet.
Do we have a design?
Sort of. I mean, it's kind of. Our intention was to spend this cycle, pushing it out and seeing if there are any issues, and then, circle back.
Can I ask for one thing that I really want to see, which is parallel map and parallel table getting something like parallel map monitored? I mean, I've been using parallel map monitored for a year. And while its developer, Max, and other people say, oh, it might give them incorrect data, let me tell you, on a very diverse collection of parallel tasks, I am very happy with it.
Isn't it's remote batch submit. I guess Roman is here, so he can talk about the parallel. I don't know.
Yes, I mean, this is on my agenda, right? I mean,
Okay, we'll get it done for 12.3. I mean, this is just imitate. You can imitate with the new graphic design exactly what parallel map monitored does, and I'll be a happy person. Okay, it gives such and such a number out of such and such a number have been done, the percentage, and the expected time to completion. And you may say, but if they're all different sizes, it won't work. Blah 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 blah. Let me tell you, it works great. Very diverse collection of workloads. Okay. And it's perfectly okay if the thing starts off saying it's going to be done next year and it's only done 2 out of whatever. So it turns out as a user, you kind of get used to that very quickly. Oh, it's got some difficult ones at the beginning and then it's going to speed up. It's fine. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be held to when it's going to come back. It's very good.
Okay, good.
Okay. But doing that for parallel map and parallel table, really worthwhile. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Okay, fine. And I mean, it will be very nice to do that for map and table.
Well, that's a
ordinarily.
different order of magnitude.
No,
of
I know.
difficulty.
I know that.
Yes.
I mean, that's if it can see, if map can plainly see that it's going over a huge number of items, that's the case of interest.
Right, but I mean, there's a technical obstruction in that we don't want to introduce extra calls to the evaluator inside of map.
Yeah, I'm
and so it's definitely on our to-do list, and we're going to try it first with functions which are less likely to destroy the whole system if you don't get it right.
Fine. Okay.
So, Stephen, if you are curious, we are in the middle of a refactoring of the Wolfram image library, and I discussed that with Piotr, and he's open to work with me and test that to some functions like color negate, some function with big loop inside the C code, so we can actually benchmark a bit the overhead and test different strategies in a safer environment.
Okay. Let's see. What was I going to?
Are you in the prototype build now? It's
yes, I did.
Range of 10 to the 6.
Yep.
Okay, so you see we have a slightly new appearance with all sorts of new options in the output size limiter.
Okay, so many comments here. Okay, first of all, the 8 period that needs to lose the period. We need a way of formatting stuff like that does lose the period. Yeah. I don't know whether we have. Do we have such a way? Is it decimal form or something? What is it? Do you understand my question?
I mean, we don't have a standard way. I mean, we do it.
I think we should have a standard way to do it.
I
thought decimal form was a way to do that.
No, we removed it from % form.
I see. But we need a way to do this because this comes up all the time. Should it be a number form? Should it be some kind of presentation form? What should it be? We need a way to do it. It just looks terrible. You have some plot and it's an 8 point. It's like, no.
I mean, we could always include at least one digit after the decimal point.
No, we don't want that. We don't want that. There's plenty of times where you have, look, if I make a table, come on, guys, we need to solve this problem, not a different problem, right? If I say range of 10 divided by 2, for example, okay? And then I say n of that, right? I do not want to see 1 point.
But no, that cannot be changed.
No, not in this case. I want a version of this where I don't see 1 point, period, end of story.
Is this a variant of chop?
No. Well, yes, it could be, but that would turn it into an actual integer. It is a variant of chop, actually.
Oh,
that's what you're asking for,
semantics.
Right?
I know I might be asking for that. Okay, I might be asking for that. Okay, that's a different operation. That's a semantic operation. I was just asking for a presentation thing.
Right. I think perhaps an option to all the family of number forms.
I don't want that. I want a wrapper because this comes up all the time.
Okay.
Well, we can look into that.
Okay, I'm not completely opposed to a semantic one as well that changes into an actual integer. I think that might actually be useful. And it certainly won't hurt the presentation. Do you see what I'm saying? I hadn't thought of that, and it seems like a good idea to me. It's kind of like, round if it's really close.
Right. It's Integerify.
Yeah, right.
I think that some of our internal functions, like byte string, is doing that already.
No doubt. But what should we call the actual?
Right. So that'll round. Right. That'll round to. I mean, that's going to give you another machine precision thing.
Oh, I
right.
see. I see.
If you did if you round it to, I think, 1/1000, then I think it'll give you the integer.
That's even more confused. Well, whatever it
Right.
is. Okay, I think that you're right, Lou. This is the right approach to actually turn it into integers. So you're right. It needs to be something like chop.
It's like a really strict rationalize or something. Well, no, not quite, but
There's some notion like a snap grid, fiducial. You know what I'm saying? Snap.
Mm-hmm.
The concept of something like a snap grid. It's not quite integer snap doesn't quite do it for me. I mean, the truth is that chop and snap might I mean, they at least would be. Snap is a little weird, but it's something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a difference here between snapping to a grid and changing the type, converting a real into an integer while leaving other numbers still being reals.
What does chop do for zeros?
Right. It
makes it exact zero.
Right. I mean, I think we could do something like, yes, snap, and if it's a number, right, the default would be snap, comma 1,
yep.
Right? So if it's close to, and then you could do a snap of,
0.5.
0.5 or maybe 1/2. So if it's close to one of those, it changes it, and if not, and then you give it a list if you want your own custom list of snap values.
I think this is an interesting name, snap. Actually, it's not sounding as bad as I thought it would be. Because I think this is an operation that people want to do, and I've wanted many times, and I end up with crazy, tick specifications and things like this to avoid this.
How close does it have to be to?
It's got some tolerance, just like chop has a tolerance. And that's, that's the second argument. Okay, anyway, this is a good idea. So let's propagate this. Okay, let's look back at this. Okay, graphic design wise, this is a particularly drab gray. And I don't think that I don't like the fact that these things don't buttonify all the way to the top and bottom. Do we have somebody from design here?
Billy should be here. But what do you mean it's not buttonifying? Oh, well, the dividers aren't all the way?
The dividers, I think it would look clearer. It'd be easier to read if the dividers went all the way to the bottom.
Stephen, shrink the width of this notebook by half or so, or more than half. Are you willing to give up the line wrapping?
No.
Okay, so...
But then we need okay, fine. So we need a solution.
Right. I'm just pointing out the cases.
Yep. That's a good case to point out. Billy, are you here?
Yes.
Okay. This is useful, this expression size thing. The spacing looks wrong here. I would have a feeling that show more should say show double. Is that what it's doing?
It's increasing the short by a factor of 2. So if short, if one can rely on short for doubling, then yes, it's doubling.
Do we think that's useful, or does show more? I mean, double does suggest it's going to, it suggests this exponential effect rather than more, because most times when it says show more, it's show the next page. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So we're less shortening.
Show half, show double, show half.
Yeah.
But it's not double or half of the original expression.
Don't care. At this stage, it's show double.
Right. It's showing double of what's current or half of what's currently shown. I mean, that makes
too persnickety. Maybe it's too persnickety.
Okay.
What do other people think?
This. I mean, I never thought that this was somehow not precise enough, because I would not have expected it to actually show exactly twice as much or so.
All right. Okay. Fine. All right. Show more is okay. Okay. Iconize expression. Lovely. Oh no.
Yes.
Yeah.
So uniconize is not passing through the same limiter.
Talking about this, is it possible to put the limiter in the output of print?
Well, this is Mathematica. All things are possible.
You could do it. I suppose you could do it yourself, right?
How? What is
but
the
what-
output limiter?
It's not exposed. It's tied into the main loop rather tightly. I'm not sure that it's
Right, but at the end of the
Successful
day,
in
the
either way.
main loop is just calling some.
yes. There's some bulk of Wolfram language code. I don't know offhand how one would do this manually, so to speak.
Okay, well, so maybe we need a wrapper that says size limited form, or something like limited form.
Could do.
Which is sort of the analog of short, but it's a more dynamic form of short. I mean, alternatively, maybe we should make short do this.
So I mean, one reason that this output limiter works for output is that there is a place in the kernel already where this expression is stored, right? In the down values of out. If we were to do this with some arbitrary other expression, we'd need some new storage space for it.
Well, notice that we're about to see the store in notebook thing, which, oh, I see, store full expression in notebook. Okay, that's going to need an icon to go along with the other. What the hell is this?
So the settings just goes to the preferences dialog, which gives you the limit, that maximum out. The third item there is the relevant item.
It's pretty ugly.
Yeah, the settings, there's actually a different spec that I haven't yet implemented for settings, but everything else here
put
is
that
fully
as a
functional.
gear on the right. Just put that as a freaking gear on the right. It's a one set.
And how should it look when the notebook is half as wide?
It should just go at the end.
What does at the end mean? That you'd have a middle cell that's line wrapped?
No, I would just put it at the end of this cell here. It's just like
It's in the bottom
like
corner.
Signature. Yeah, it's a signature, so to speak.
Okay.
Like,
Sure.
I mean, I'm just trying to remove some text here. I would like to see icons for these things. I think it would be much easier to read.
I mean, another thing we could do is we could group these.
Yes, that would help too. Show more, show all together. Iconize expression, copy as iconized. Yeah, I think that would be good to have them spaced, because it bothers me that there's more space here And by the way, I would just remove the parens. If you're going to have that color change, I wouldn't bother with the parens.
Okay.
Billy, it would be nice to have a little bit more life to the color here.
Okay. Some brighter blues.
Maybe something
Maybe
like that.
Slightly less gray background.
Maybe something is bothering me about this. I mean, this was
the upgrade after you complained that the old background was too blue, right?
Okay.
Right. It
Well,
used to be a different color, which I think was blue. I may be misremembering. But I have a V7 open here.
Honestly, look, several things about this are better. Like the fact that these go to the bottom is better. See, those things go to the bottom is better. And if they have to wrap, then obviously they don't go to the bottom, but they go to the bottom of their line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think the lowercase is better. Was bothering me here, especially in this case here, and where you've got inconsistent capitalization. Come on, guys. I would just go lowercase, unless this is inconsistent. Making sense? But you can't muddle up the capitalization.
Unless we go to icons and then cases.
No, they're going to be words as well. They're going to be icons and words.
Ah, okay.
Why did we change this? I mean, I don't think it's quite right to have. Why did we have this footer? I mean, the footer has to be consistent with the footer on this of these things, right? Oh, for goodness sake. Okay, I don't understand why this color would not be the same as this color here. Come on, guys. Right, and if you make that color the same, then you've got to change this back to have parens.
Yeah,
Hello?
we could work to synchronize. We could work to synchronize some of these styles.
Yes, that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
And this height is wrong relative to this one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Which height is wrong?
This height here.
Uh-huh.
Relative to this height here. This is a ribbon. It should be the same kind of ribbon as this ribbon here.
Well, that's a button, right? I mean, the ribbon on the summary box never needs to line wrap, right? Because it only ever has that exact text.
Okay, fine. But you guys need to sort it out. I don't know what to tell you, but sort it out. Okay, what are you showing me here? Data not in notebook, store now.
Click on it.
Well, first of all, the alignment of the radio buttons with their text is wrong. That needs to be fixed.
Yeah, that's known.
Okay.
Now,
Well,
first of all, are you okay with the text itself?
I'm thinking. I think the first thing should say store in place in this notebook, or store in this notebook. Store in this box is incomprehensible to somebody who doesn't know internal stuff. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agonized about that a bit. I erred on the side of accuracy, but I'm willing to ease up on that for clarity.
Maybe store in line is clearest.
How about store here in this notebook?
That, well, I'm going to argue. I mean, that sounds a bit long to me, and I'm going to argue again that for store inline, because we have dollar inline storage limit, dollar notebook inline storage
Well,
limit.
that
What
makes
is it?
sense then. Store in line in this notebook.
Okay.
I'll put
Now-
out there that your objection to store in this box that you dislike because you know too much about the system.
No,
And,
I don't know what the heck a box is. I understand. that this
there's a
thing here is
box
bit-
right there. There's a rectangle.
I know, but it's like saying something like it's like some crazy skeuomorphic design where the thing says, fluff your quill, and it's got a picture of a pen on a screen. And what the hell does it mean? It's got a picture of a quill pen, and it says, "Do you want to fluff your quill now?" What does it mean? That's a bad example, but you see what I'm saying. It's a box on a screen. Store in this box is like you buy it from a container store or something. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I think store in line in this notebook is the most sensible thing.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, I would suggest that the
Do we have a non-inline store in the notebook?
we don't yet, but we might.
Right. It's theoretically conceivable, but we don't currently have one.
Right.
Okay, so my next comment is I think that this should say at the top here, size 16 megabytes or whatever. And then at the bottom, it should just say store now. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or either that or okay.
I always wonder with these things where you first have to decide what to do and then you have to hit the button. Why not have 3 buttons? And then it's a one-click operation.
Right. Well, where would you put those 3 buttons?
Right there.
Right there, where the instead of the radio box, you have 3 buttons.
That's a good point.
Oh, I see.
Hmm.
Well, it's still a 2-click operation, right?
No, it's not.
Oh,
You
well,
say
okay.
store now. It's
All right.
3
So he's
clicks
gonna.
right now.
Well, you need to click it to make the whole thing appear. But
Yes.
yes, but right. So I guess the claim is instead of having a radio button, so it's a 2-click operation instead of a 2 to 3 click operation, I guess is the claim.
This doesn't even really need to be a separate. I mean, this could just be a menu with 3 choices in it, right? Instead of
Yes, it
popping
could.
up this attached cell, it could just pop up a menu.
Yes, it could.
That's what we do in the predictive interface, for example. And it works pretty well.
Fine. Then I think it should say at the bottom or at the top, expression size 16 megabytes. Maybe at the bottom because there's less mouse motion to get to the thing you want. I mean, it would be nice. Okay, so with the menu, the keyboard navigation, and I don't think we have UX people here, do we? Do we have UX people here?
We have Christina, right? Isn't she a UX person?
Hello.
Yes. Hello. So good. So I mean, what we want is something where the keyboard navigation is going to work. So if you press store now and the first menu item is, I mean, how do we do that? The first menu item is the default selected item or something. How do we do that? Do you understand what I'm saying? Anybody?
You want the location of the mouse pointer to somehow find the first item?
Well, I don't know because what's nice about this is that it suggests the default. Okay. And many people will find this completely confusing, and we want to suggest a default.
Well, I mean, well, I'm not sure what you mean by default, right? Because you'll have to click on something, but right, the normal idiom is that the default action is right blue background or has some definite color background.
I understand, but that doesn't happen with menus, right? If these
no,
were 3
radio buttons are the only things that have. I mean, radio buttons.
No,
is the
I'm
right
not
idiom
talking
for that.
about radio buttons. Like if you open the open dialog, right, and you have some buttons, right, the default action that's tied to return it has a blue background from the operating system. Right. So if you had something selected, right, then that open button, instead of being grayed out, would be blue, right?
Yeah, default buttons are special.
Okay,
They
but
look special.
I agree. Once it's a button, you can do that, but as a pure menu, you cannot. So the argument, therefore, that I'm making is, I agree with Roman. Why not just have 3 buttons? One of them is default and already highlighted. And if you hit return, that's the button that will be hit done. And that's the button you have highlighted here. Store in line in this notebook. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand. And I would need to make sure that return actually visits the content of attached cells before promising that feature.
Okay, fine. But conceptually, that seems like the thing to do, right? And then what I would do is I would probably put at the bottom expression size 16 megabytes, okay, as a footer.
So why does it say 16.0 here, not 16 point?
Well, it shouldn't.
Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah. I don't think. I think it should be rounded to the megabyte. I think. You know, yeah. Tim on our live stream is pointing out a combo box can have a default value. Although this isn't a combo box because you don't want to display the choice at the beginning. We only want it to come up if you press store now. Okay, so this looks very nice. This looks good. This looks like what we want. So long as we can have that default button there, and on.
So there's one case that Itai hasn't mentioned yet, or maybe that's what we're going to look at right now.
Yes.
Okay, but the default is different.
Yes, and the reason.
And the first one is in fact grayed out and inoperable.
And if you hover over it, maybe does it give you additional?
Yes.
The embed button size limit. Why is there a button size limit?
There's an embed size limit because we don't want people crashing their front ends because they're trying to.
No, I understand. But I don't think it should say embed button. I think it should just say. By the way, maybe we should put, given that wording, instead of store in line in this notebook, embed in line in this notebook. Why not? Especially since you're using embed in the next phrase. Because that makes it clear that this thing is embedded, it's part of the document, it's going to be carried around with the document, as opposed to store it externally in some file or something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but so this expression for okay, with the wording has got to be consistent here. This expression exceeds the size for notebook embedding and can only be stored in a separate file.
That sounds good.
In a separate file, not as a separate file, in a separate file. The fact that it is its own file is a detail.
Got it.
Okay. All right, now what to do with the graying out? Hold on 1 second. So let me just.
Okay.
I think it could be a grayed out button with a question mark after it. Okay, and it'll say the expression size at the bottom. Or we could just not have that button, and down below the expression size, we could say too big to embed locally, too big to embed in this notebook. What do you think? It's less
I would
obvious
lean toward not having the option at all.
Yeah, I think that's right. But now you could be able to use that option if you change the setting for dollar inline whatever size.
No, it's a system option.
I see.
So dollar inline storage limit controls, when does when do you get that button? at all. But then there's the second option, which is just a system option, which is there if you really want to shoot yourself in the foot. But the reason we put that upper limit is because people were crashing their front ends trying to store super large expressions.
Okay. Okay. So fine. So I think don't put the button, and I would just put size blah blah blah, and then in parens too large for embedded too large to embed in this notebook.
Right. I'm going to I'm not vehemently opposed, but I'm going to argue the contrary, because if what we based this off of was the send mail dialog, where if it's above 10 megabytes or whatever is the limit, then you still have the attach the notebook to the attach the notebook to the email is still visible but grayed out, and you can only select the send link to cloud, or however it's phrased, right? I forget it. I don't use that dialogue often enough to know the phrasing.
Well, okay.
Do
I admit, yeah, I understand what you're talking about. Yes, I could go either way on this. Other thoughts from other people?
I think it is clearer if it's grayed out, because that otherwise you might wonder why you have sometimes 2 or 3. And there's also a good place where you put that information about the size limit.
Fine. Okay, fine. Let's do it. By the way, I'd just like to comment on the send mail stuff. The fact that there is no auto-completion on send mail, on the address line of send mail, just drives me crazy. It doesn't even remember, people I've sent it to before in the product. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I have a question that I have no idea where the mail system on a Mac or something gets its contact list from. But, is it a keychain thing, or is it something local to the app?
It's probably a combination of pulling things from your contacts and what it's seen before.
Right. So contacts, can be configured to, be your own local contacts, or boy, I'm blanking on the name, LDAP, right? LDAP, right? It can be the contacts settings in system preferences can be configured to use LDAP or various other.
Okay, but given that we now have interaction with the system keychain, I don't see why we can't have our send mail mechanism, request that.
I don't think that's technically a keychain. We could ask for it. It would, prompt a new warning dialogue from the system saying, Mathematica is trying to contact your contacts.
Right. But that's fine. I mean, because that would make it unbelievably much more usable to me.
Right.
Because I don't know how to spell anybody's name anymore, because it just auto-completes.
Right.
Anyway, is that for Fahim or somebody else? I don't know who is working on that right now, but that's
that's definitely not Fahim. I think, Lou, do you know, what was this, a Larry project?
Well, the dialogue was Kevin. But as far as how to talk to the OS to get the completions, I don't know that.
I think the expert on the keychain, if that's relevant.
I think the right person to talk to would be Rob Schofield.
Okay,
Cole.
Fine.
Right, except Cole is currently, at least for the time being, Rob is Cole, because Cole is working on the video library link in the front end stuff.
Okay. So anyway, get the question asked. Let's figure out the answer to that. Okay, let's loop back here to the thing at the top. It is really bothering me that the look of that ribbon at the top is different from the look of the ribbon in these summary boxes. But okay, we'll get that straightened out. Now the question is, okay, so that icon, the arrow whatchamajig icon, should definitely be the icon for this store full expression in notebook, right?
Yep.
And then copy is iconized. I'm sure we can have something which has a little copy thing with an icon type piece.
I mean, if we're going to combine these into menus, right, we could be an iconize in place or copy to clipboard or something like that, right?
No, we don't want to combine these into menus. This is fine to ribbon it like this. The ribbon is fine. I just think it needs icons and it needs a look that's more like this.
Okay.
Okay. And it needs to, this one goes red, this one goes blue. I mean, come on. Okay. Perhaps Christina, if she was, pointed at this, would say all those things in her report. I don't know. But anyway, I'm pointing them out.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else to say about this before we go on to the next item here?
Yes. So, so Lou can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think right now this is going through put and get when you.
Okay. So we're talking about the local object storing business.
Yes.
Okay. Why aren't we using WXF files?
Because they're not as faithful and nor are they as fast, I don't think. I mean, they may be faster. I don't think they would be as fast as
MX files.
Yes. Right. And so I guess the question is, I think with a local object, since it's living on your system, it's probably fine to use MX files. With cloud objects, it's maybe a bit, and I know maybe we do MX files for local and put for.
Why don't we do cloud. WXF? We should never use using put. We should never use put.
No, WXF is not accurate enough. It's just fun.
WXF.
No, WXF is not accurate enough. It cannot remember.
And it's a bug.
Well, does it? That's not true. And second of all, even if it were true, I'm not going to introduce a. No. Open the source notebook for. Open the source notebook for binary serialize.
Why the source notebook?
Because it's a tentative example.
Yeah, I think the wrong set of people are here, but if
no, I was one of the lead developers of WXF, so don't give me that nonsense, Stephen.
Okay, I thought Dorian was the main person.
Under the strict supervision of me and Rob Schofield.
Okay, all right, fine.
Go to possible issues at the very bottom. Is this not?
Well, it says packed arrays of floats do not round trip when serialized.
All right, so maybe it's on. You went to binary serialize rather than binary deserialize.
But this seems like the relevant thing.
But okay. But there's an even more fundamental issue. Again, go to the very bottom. There we go.
Okay. What am I seeing here?
You're seeing something that, right, it's because WXF has this special form for transporting associations. Things that require validation don't get marked as valid and therefore do not get made atomic.
This seems like a bug.
It depends what you're trying to do. But the only thing that can completely faithfully reproduce expressions is the kernel. It's the only thing. So put and MX, which go through the kernel, are completely faithful. Well, I
Okay,
guess.
I will make a different argument. My argument would be when you say store a data set or something,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for something like sparse array,
Mm-hmm.
I'm very confused by this. I'm sorry, I'm very, very confused. I don't understand what it is. That there's some valid flag that's not being set or something. Is that the issue?
Well, it's that uh, it's the way it's constructed. Essentially, I mean, right? It hasn't been turned into a T rational from a T normal because of the way thing, you know.
Okay, why isn't that just a bug?
Because it happens in a library that lives outside the kernel, and the kernel is right. It's being careful not to evaluate things in order to, because it doesn't want to create evaluation leaks.
Okay, so
Right.
let me walk through this again. So you're saying WXF, which is consumable by things other than the kernel,
and implemented outside the kernel,
yes, does not maintain. Okay, when you do binary serialize, that is coming from the kernel. So the kernel could put whatever tagging it wants into that expression, correct?
up to a point, right? But it's the basic issue that full form isn't actually full form, right? You can have the, right. I mean, that is the basic issue.
Okay, fine. But why is WXF not putting tagging information, which it plainly knows when it's created by binary serialize?
Well, because most clients wouldn't know how to do that.
I understand that. That's fine.
I would have to think through the implementation. I don't know that
my
is possible.
suggestion is this, okay? That the kernel has certain things which it knows, and that it tags those things, and other clients just ignore those tags. Those are kernel special tags. I mean,
that may or may not be possible.
Okay. Well, why don't you look at that? Because that seems like a
I will give it all the consideration it deserves.
I mean, there are.
That doesn't sound good, I
mean, there are similar problems.
I just want to make the comment. Given that comment, I would like to hear that Dorian, if it is rejected, I want Dorian to reject it as well.
All right. You'll notice that this example was written by Dorian. So if Dorian thought this was a bug that he could just fix, he would have done it.
It was under your care. So okay, Roman.
And then he wrote this example, and he wrote this example independently of me. So
okay, fine. Okay, Roman.
Yes, I mean, there are similar problems with sending stuff through WSDP or Masslink, which I encounter all the time with parallel computing. It's all these data types with hidden stuff like solutions of differential equations or interpolating functions or stuff like that. And there the problem is that on the remote end, when you restore the value of a symbol, it doesn't go through the evaluator, so it never restores that stuff. So I mean, we have cases where we do not do as well as we should. I mean,
are you using WXF in the parallel?
No, I use Masslink. I mean, for parallel tools.
Right, and the first implementation of WXF used Mathlink, and therefore it was subject to all those same limitations. Then Dorian did a second implementation in the kernel, so right, so you remember there was a V7 there, right? When it was still experimental, it had version 7 of WXF, and then when we de-experimentalized it, it went to version 8. So the version 7 implementation was based on Mathlink, and then version 8 is directly in the kernel and is therefore more accurate in some ways, but then it actually introduced a different set of edge cases because of that.
All right, but what you're saying is there's a general problem that faithfully rehydrating an expression because of its internal tagging information that is not carried along in full form, is difficult.
Yes.
Okay. So I
Right.
think that's an issue that we should, what it sounds to me like we have to do is to have a full form that has some kind of wrapper that's called, has a rehydrate wrapper or something, which is special and which is treated by the rehydrator independent of evaluation. Something like that.
Yeah. I would, well, I'm not going to accept or reject that off of 5 seconds of thought, but I would certainly want to consult with people like Tom and Mark.
Fine. I think, but it sounds to me like this is a general problem that we need to solve. That the kernel knows stuff, it's sending it through a channel which can go to other things, which will ignore those pieces of tagging. And how do we present tagging that is not visible in full form? Is the question.
Right.
So I think we need a solution to that.
I mean, the current situation is, the problem is we either have faithful representation with MX and then it's not portable, but if you want to make it portable, then it doesn't work. So
fine. So we need a transfer form, right? We need some kind of thing, a transfer form type thing, which is some kind of potentially quite ugly symbolic expression form that contains enough tagging information that it can be rehydrated completely faithfully. So with respect to this comment here, local object is clearly fine to use MX files.
Yep.
Okay. The cloud.
Right. I guess the question there is the limiting factor the input form or the network speed. And I suppose depending, well, MX versus input form can make huge changes in the size of the file. So
Let me make a suggestion. Assume that you press the cloud button. Maybe it should extrude a sub button that asks you, do you need this to work on 32-bit systems? Default, no. Or alternatively, we could just have a setting that by default, because I think that's a really bizarre, I think it's a corner case. I don't think it's going to be very common. I don't know what other 32-bit things may be arising in the future, but I have to believe that they're a dying breed.
They do seem to be a dying breed. I'm not sure.
By the time microcontrollers aren't, I don't know what they're at these days, but yeah.
Right. The Raspberry Pi still supports 32-bit operating systems, but even that, right, the Raspberry Pi itself is no longer a 32-bit system.
Oh, is that right? Why does its OS support? So you can run multiple OSs on it?
Yes. You've been able to for a while, right? They have their own their own distro, but then there are other. There are other Linux distros, but you can do both.
Is their own distro 32-bit?
Yes. The one that supports 64-bit is the Raspberry Pi 4, but they decided to run the old OS, so they had the same distribution for all of their stuff. But there is a 64-bit version for the from the foundation for the Raspberry Pi 4. So we need to port our system to support that.
There's a bigger question of do we actually want to just have a 64-bit ARM Linux product? Because I think, ARM is, becoming obviously a much bigger thing on the desktop.
Separate issue. The success of ARM and servers, we've had discussions with ARM and other people for years about this issue. So it's different topic. Okay. But the question here is what to do in the cloud case. How much slower is it?
Well, on the cloud, I guess I haven't timed it. In the local object case, I've gotten speed ups of you know, 4 minutes going down to 10 seconds, right?
I see. Okay, well, let's check it for the cloud. My guess is we're going to want MX files on the cloud. And my guess is we're going to want some setting or some warning, something which is, for now, this won't work on 32-bit systems.
Right, except on the Raspberry Pi, where it would need to say this won't work on 64-bit systems.
Right. Right. I would say in the case of 64 bits, I would say this won't work on legacy 32-bit systems. For people
Right.
who are, who might otherwise be confused, it's like, just don't worry about that. If you don't know what it means, you don't worry about it.
Right.
Okay. Okay. The ones store in an object are clearly marked. Don't clearly show that they're now actually calls to.
Right. So actually click the store in local object button in one of them.
I hate this multi-clickery. Okay.
Right. So I mean, right. So if you copied that output and did hold of paste and evaluated that, you would not see hold of sparse array. You would see hold of get of local object or whatever. Right. And
I don't understand this. So if I do hold of what the heck happened here? That pinked.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I don't know. I haven't hunted that down, and maybe Lou needs to hunt that down.
Okay, hold of this. Ooh, weird.
Right, because it right, that get needs to evaluate to actually, so it's just the fact that it says data stored in a local object. Okay.
Hold on. So when this evaluates, I don't understand why it's asking me to store now again.
Because that's a new sparse array. Right, it's gone through the evaluator, it imported it, it created a new sparse array. It's just the same way as if you did %, right? It's formatting the object again. Right, if you just evaluate % now, right?
Yeah, I get it. I would argue, I mean, a luxury feature might be in this case where it knows it came from a local object. If it was able to give that as the default in the store now, that would be a luxury. I don't think it's strictly necessary. You get what I'm saying? In other words,
I understand what you're saying. I just don't know how
it would have to be tagged in the sparse array.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think like this. I think the sparse array formatting code would need to like have a hash table of known sparse arrays, and is that?
No, it could be in the tagged in this thing when it goes through and evaluates it. Sparse array has all kinds of crud inside it. It could have something which indicates what kind of storage it's expecting, its persistence location.
I have a hard time seeing that. Right. I mean,
why doesn't it just have an option in the sparse array that determines what that display item will be?
Right. Well, for one thing, I mean, if you just generate a sparse array and then you decide to save it, then
I see. It doesn't. No, it doesn't. It's already been built.
Right.
I see what you're saying. Well, but when you evaluate that input, it's evaluating some construct that does know what was in it, right? When you evaluate this, I could copy this. That's some kind of box structure, which has been changed by me clicking here. So when that box structure is evaluated, the parsing of that box structure can introduce a tag that is then carried forward in the kernel version of the expression.
That's right? A positive. Yeah, I would
Take a
I don't want to commit to anything without talking to Rob, right?
Okay,
and that's something that will. I mean,
it's a luxury item. It's not the most important thing. It's
right,
something
and
that
because
we should do it.
it would sort of need to be done on an object by object basis.
All right, okay.
So
put it on the side for now, okay? But
right.
let's ask about it. Okay, let's go back to this. When else would you see this?
Convert to input form, convert to standard form on that input.
Right. Yeah. So if you selected that in of 10 and did Shift Command I, then you would definitely see it.
Here's a comment. If we think this is bad, and it isn't great, we could have a decorator function on the outside that does nothing evaluation-wise, but is merely a formatting wrapper. Right, like remote storage or whatever we're calling this, remotely stored object.
Right, it has a format value, but its evaluation is basically return my argument.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Have a think about that. I mean, this isn't heinous what it's doing right now. Although I have a bad feeling that there will be cases like in documentation and things where this might get heinous for reasons that we don't expect.
Mm-hmm.
All right, on to the next item if we can.
Okay.
We comment on our live stream about semantic import, but let's take a look. Ben is saying, I see semantic import is on the agenda. Hopefully the issue has been addressed where returned results are not being updated when data changes. How can
right.
Go
so ahead. Yes. So semantic import, as was written by Tali however many years ago, does some sort of automatic caching. And if you don't know about the secret automatic caching, you can keep calling semantic import and it gives you old. Right. And so at one point we were going to rewrite semantic import from scratch because it's written in Go, and basically, once Tali stopped working on it, there was nobody to work on it. But then Sarah King, who was working on that, left. So it's just sort of, languished, I guess is the word. So there's the specific issue of semantic import. So I see here that specific import question, and then there were two sort of more general issues. One about, do we need some sort of persistence location for caching that somehow gets auto cleaned up? And there's a
so this is in fact about caching. I mean, the thing that was on our agenda here is in fact about caching.
Yes.
Although from a different perspective.
Right.
And right now it's got a caching leak.
Basically.
Horrifying. Okay, let's start off with the beginning. Why is it caching?
Jeremy, I think for better or for worse, you're the remaining expert on semantic import.
I've never known anything. Well, I shouldn't say I've never known anything about semantic import, but I sure don't know the cache and how that works and why it exists, other than to ask the author.
And actually, maybe I should have thought. This is my bad. If somebody can try to get Stefan R, he, as head of QA, he has gone in and occasionally fixed critical issues, so he may be able to give us a better answer. But I don't know that for a fact.
We can ask. We could ask Tali. He does exist and is heard from.
All right.
But I mean, look, semantic import was originally built as an experimental thing. And I don't even know what categories of input it deals with at this point.
Whatever Tali originally wrote, because it doesn't, and this is another set of complaints, right? It doesn't integrate with all of the spellings that are used by the entity framework. And so whatever.
Okay, so look,
It's actually an interesting hybrid of that, if I remember right. Maybe I'm misremembering and I'm confused, but I thought we hooked it up to interpreter. So when it's built into semantic import, like person or city, then you get the thing where half the time it doesn't recognize it because
okay, I get it.
But,
so there's 3 different frameworks that we could be using here. One is the local Wolfram Alpha framework, which doesn't exist yet, but hopefully Jeremy is getting much closer. Is that a true statement?
It is true that hopefully we're getting much closer.
Okay. All right. But I mean, if we had that, then semantic import could use it. True statement?
That is exactly the plan, is the rewrite from scratch of semantic import to use that.
Okay, fine. All right. What it's doing right now is using Bloom filters and things like this, right? It is using a different case, which is an interesting case, where you have a large collection of things that are thought to be of an identical type. You know, for the work we're doing with our friends at Microsoft, that's another case where that has the same type of form factor of a large collection of data, all of the same type, or all assumed to be of the same type. Right? So that's another case. There probably are some nice demos out of using our stuff as part of Excel that that show what we're talking about. Let's see, but I mean, so I don't know, right? That's a different use case for an interpreter. Is interpreter where there's a collection of identical objects, right?
I'm sorry, I got a little lost in that sentence.
Okay, all right. Okay. Semantic import uses a different approach for figuring out whether a column of things is all of a particular type.
I believe that is true. I mean,
I know
don't ask me to me to read the Go code, but I believe that is a true statement.
Okay. It is using Bloom filters to do that. Okay. Which, by the way, I believe are now part of our data structure system. So we actually have a top-level implementation, efficient top-level implementation of those, where we.
Yeah, I'm looking very forward to it.
It exists, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, well, it exists, but not for use by alpha servers yet. Yes.
Right. Okay. So hopefully really soon. It's complete silence from Jeremy on that. Okay. Anyway, all right. Okay, but I mean, to me, semantic import is something that should be taken over by the machine learning group. And well, I don't know. It's a merger of what we, there's a machine learning component and there's a Wolfram Alpha NLU component. But what we're trying to solve here is something much more mundane, which is just the fact that it has a caching leak, right? Is that correct? It caches for a reason we don't even understand, but that caching is leaking. Is that correct?
I believe that is true.
Okay, so maybe we should figure out what it's caching. Does anybody know what it is caching? It's caching interpretations, presumably.
I think it's worse than that. I think it's caching the actual file, right? So it downloads the file and sticks it, and via some possibly via some deterministic mechanism. So if it
so you mean that the same named file, if it's read again, is thought to have the same data in it, even if the file has been updated? That's kind of lame. That's kind of wrong caching.
I think it's sort of the same URL, if I recall correctly.
Fine. So that's obviously wrong, right? So I don't know whether URLs these days accurately report their update time. Do they? Do you understand what I'm talking about?
I understand what.
Yeah,
what
it's got to be a server-dependent question.
I think that probably is not.
Yeah, for example, in local cache, I do that. I check the update time of the URL and then decide whether I should update the cache or not.
Do you think you get it right?
Well, if the server, it depends on the server, but nowadays I think web servers and other kind of servers are are pretty good at this because it really saves a lot of bandwidth.
Okay, fair enough. So then we could assume that. But so then this cache may not be correctly getting invalidated when the HTTP response packet, HTTP response does not contain the correct update time. So that's a bug which we should go fix.
Yeah, and is it that, or is it that semantic import isn't even making a head request or something to the URL because it just assumes that it should use the cache?
Well, right. So it needs to get a response from the URL. Yeah, Ben is pointing out that all this automatic interpretation is nice, but that there are other reasons to use semantic import just because it's a convenient way to package things into data sets and so on. Hopefully import is becoming better at packaging things in data sets. But okay, let's just go back to the original questions. Okay, so first point, let's find out why the cache isn't being invalidated. Okay? Fair?
Yep.
Okay. So now the question is, what should the cache be? Whatever the cache is, if it's a reasonable cache, why isn't it just using local cache?
Because that didn't exist at the time.
Fine. So let's look into it using local cache, in which case it would have the same, cache cleanup that local cache has. Fair?
Sure. I guess I'm not super familiar with local cache, so I had forgotten that we had such a thing. Right. But I did also want to bring up this sort of second thread about sort of changing $temporary directory, and it's still not entirely clear to me what the purpose of this change is. So maybe Roman, you can.
Yes, I mean the only purpose is to hide all the ugly mess that we create in the /temp directory, and there's no suggestion to clean up, to delete files or so, but we'll just use a different subdirectory of the current temp directory. Now it was pointed out that this contradicts the documentation, but it's already what we do on the Mac, right? On the Mac, your $temporary directory is some user-specific one, but the /temp still exists, and Masslink still puts its stuff there, neatly packaged into a subdirectory. So
but it's still the $temporary directory that the OS gave it, right? That's not that I don't understand that directory structure, but it's exactly the same for every application. And if I look into it, it's got all sorts of files from all sorts of random applications, not just, yeah.
Okay, so let me understand. So first point is, trust the operating system. Let it give us the name of a temporary directory.
Right, which is what it does.
Fine.
Yes.
Second, my suggestion is that we put our stuff in a subdirectory just for cleanliness.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I mean, your first point, use what the operating system gives us, does not force us to put everything at that level. We should, for our internal purposes, create a subdirectory. That is, the idea would be that the user visible $temporary directory and create directory, create file, and so on would work as now. But internally, we would use a different version of these functions and put our stuff into a subdirectory. Now, this would be a gradual process. Obviously, we don't, because I don't know how many places there are that use internal create temporary.
Okay, wait. So that sounds different from what you said in the email, because in the email you said.
Yes, I mean, I'm not. My point is to clean up that mess, and if we gradually change the way we internally use temporary files and we put them into a subdirectory of our own, then I'm quite happy about that. And then, I mean, we don't need to change the user visible value, but it means changing code of potentially a large number of packlets and C code and top level code.
Right, so it'll take a while to get done.
Yes, I mean, it doesn't have to be done in one step. It can be a gradual process.
So I think there's one other thing that I might suggest, which I don't know whether it's a good idea or not, but I guess with browsers, when you say clear the browser cache, that cache is not in temp directories. That cache is in user directories, right?
Correct. It's in the equivalent of the library directory.
Okay. Do we have a clear library directory button somewhere in system preferences?
I don't think so. I mean,
I
we
think
have
should have.
we have right. We have clean start, which deletes.
No, that's different.
Right.
That's
Well,
different. Well, I'm
what do you mean by clean the library then? Right? Because
I mean something like somewhere in here, and this really needs to be updated. All this stuff somewhere in here, just like there's a reset to defaults or whatever. Somewhere in here, there should be a thing that says clear my local files directory.
what is local files directory? Right? Is that $user base directory? Is what is local files directory?
Wherever local objects are kept.
Yes, I mean that would actually be a good yes. So clear all the local objects. I mean, at least the ones in the default $local base.
I mean,
caches.
In a perfect world, right? We would have those things. So caches, for example.
Right. So basically, clear $local base is what you're talking about.
I think so, but it might be nice to have a managed
There's also cache base directory. There are two directories which we should offer to clear.
Which?
Cache base directory.
Which is what? Which is the cache for the entity store?
No, well, for local cache and others, resource functions and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, the entity framework is still sticking things in $user base directory.
No, it should. I mean, cache stuff should. For example, on my system, I've configured it that those caches are on a fast local disks, and the rest is on my home directory, which is network mounted. So that's a useful distinction between the two.
Okay, let me make a suggestion. Okay, so we've clearly got lots of functions that put random caching data in random places. We should slowly try to inventory all of those and try to make them consistent. Point one. Point two, we should set it up so that something in preferences allows you to manage the cache directories and manage the local base directory. The cache directories, presumably, if you blow away the cache, nothing terribly bad will happen. We'll just start to reload.
That is what is supposed to happen, right? That is the purpose of a cache directory. Things that if they disappear can be regenerated.
Yes,
right. Which is different from $user base directory, which
I agree.
Stores things like preferences, which obviously would be.
Right.
I mean, sometimes you want to clear them, but usually you don't.
Right. So to me, the cache thing is just clear the cache. Boom, press this button, it'll clear the cache. In a perfect world, you would say clear cache stuff that's more than 30 days old or something. See what I'm saying?
Right. I mean, although I don't think anybody offers that button. Like if you go into your browser, I think they have a clear cache now, but I don't think they have a clear.
They used to have a clear older cache. I'm not sure.
Caches are often hashed, and it's not even clear what that means.
All right, fine. Clear the cache is fine. But I mean, the main thing is my computer is running out of disk space. What do? Let me go clear
new
cache.
disk.
Right. I mean, browsers will offer to clear your history or downloads.
Oh, I see. Yeah, right.
After a certain amount of time.
Okay, so that's a little different because that has a historical tagging. Okay, so in local objects, there might be more segmentation there of clear these things, but don't clear these things. And in a perfect world, we would have better information there. So we could say manage local object store, and you could select what you want.
Yes, actually, one thing that I think we should have fairly soon is a particular button to clear all the persistent kernel initialization. Because that's the kind of stuff that might bite you if you have something in there and you don't even know where it is.
Well, look, the first thing that I would like to see, and I thought we were getting this, and maybe even as a function repository thing, is just show me what the initializations actually were.
No, that's another item on my agenda. That's part of the original design of the initialization system. A browser for your initializations.
Right. But I mean, even just for diagnostics purposes, having that as a function repository item would already be useful. Right, even before it's built in.
Yeah, there's something, is it called initialization objects or something?
Okay. Well, all right. So that's
okay.
that's
I
a
mean,
thing to worry about. But let's go on and see if we can just get through this quickly, and then we have to wrap up. Level ignores heads true for negative levels. Oh boy. Okay. What?
Sorry, I was muted, and therefore you were ignoring me. So I'm not. I mean, these last two items are neither time sensitive. So if necessary, we can
All right,
come back.
but let's just have one crack at this. Okay.
Right. So right. So all right. So this is right. So this is right. So I think the place to start, right? You have this compound expression, and you ask for negative levels, and I mean we're using level as an example. This actually applies to sort of all things that might take level specs. And you say, and you use the default heads goes to false, then you get the things that are right, not atoms, but sort of one level above the leaves in the tree. And if you look at this tree that represents the expression, then right, we see that GF5 of YZ is sort of, is one level up from the bottom. And that's consistent with sort of heads.
The question is, are you counting depth in a head or not?
Right. Now,
right? That's the question.
Right.
You're counting depth when you're using negative levels. If I have a very, very deep head, does that count towards my leveling for the things which are the arguments of that head? Is that correct?
I
think it is correct.
Yes, I think so.
Yes.
Okay. So if I were to say, yeah, you've got one here, that's a deep head, right? This thing here, if I say depth of that, why isn't that 4? Am I confused?
Because you're using, yeah, well, right, because you have a compound head, so you just have blank of H of 4. So it's 3. So 3 is correct.
Oh, I see. So depth does not go into that. So if I say depth of F of G of H of K of X, I see that depth is ignoring the headdress, so to speak.
Right, because the default is heads goes to false.
Okay, all right. So then when heads goes to true, you're asking what is on level -1, and the answer is here. What's on level -1? So if I say level here, and I say on level -1.
Right, they're all at level -1 because they're all right. The head, right? If you do the tree visualization that you have, well, the tree visualization that we'll get from the next section. So if you go look at the next section,
yeah,
right, then we get trees that look like that, right? So if you put your right, but if you look at the depth, right, so the issue is it's using the depth when it's sort of laying out the tree, but not when it's actually, the heads goes to true when it's laying out the tree, but not when it's computing the depth. Is that a good way to put it, Ian? Or do you have a better?
Exactly right. Yep. It's like when you say heads goes to true, you're allowed to find matches in the head, but you still are always computing depth as though heads goes to false.
You're allowed to find matches in the head. For what purpose? For something like cases or something.
Right.
Or you're right, how you're navigating the tree.
Matches, like if you do level and you specify some level spec, by match I just mean a part that's on one of those levels. Right. The level spec refers, so heads goes to true allows the level spec to find expressions in the head, but it still always uses heads goes to false for the depth.
And Stephen, if I may, I just want to say that it took Ian and me a good hour and a half, I think, to prepare this agenda item in a way that was clear to the two of us. So I'm not sure that rushing this discussion at the end is giving it its full
enough.
consideration.
But my guess is that what I think you're right, that we'll need a heads goes to something other than true false.
Right.
Because you're saying one of them is look in there for something, and the other is count levels from what's in the head.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So heads goes to true means look in there.
But it doesn't sort of change how it's computed once you're there.
Right.
And so you see this contradiction that when you compute the depth with heads goes to true, you get sort of different answers when you just compute depth.
Yeah.
Right. So that 5-6 versus 3-3.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. So hold on. Right. I'm just trying to think about whether full is the right, because essentially what's happening is, are the heads sprayed out as part of the expression tree, or is it packaged up into this atomic thing that is the head? That's the main question. If it's sprayed out, if the heads are being treated like a zeroth element of the expression, and the whole thing is just, it happens to be the zeroth element, but otherwise it's just the same as everything else, then you'll get this behavior where it counts the levels. Am I making sense? But if the head is encapsulated into an atomic thing, then it won't, then you won't be counting the levels. Make sense?
Ian, I think I might miss something, but
So you listed 2 cases and there are 3 cases.
Okay. I didn't. Okay. But the 2 cases I listed, I don't think are completely silly. One of them is
right. So the first one you listed is the only thing that makes sense for tree level, like for trees in general, because they don't have a heads goes to true or false.
Well, no, I'm saying the following. Okay, you have an expression. Okay, it's got some weird thing packed in its head. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One way to think about an expression is it is an array with a zeroth element that is the head. Okay?
Right.
If you do that, then recursing down the zeroth element is just like recursing down the first element. It has the same level constraints, right?
Right.
It's the same depth thing as
that would be the consistent way to handle it, which is what we're calling heads goes to full or heads goes to all.
No, I understand that. But so what I'm saying is
page.
That I don't know whether that's consistent or not. I mean, it's a different way to handle it. It is as if the head is just the zeroth part of the list, which is the collection of arguments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
As opposed to the other case where the head is treated as this atomic thing, and heads goes to false is it's atomic. Don't go anywhere inside it. Don't even look inside it. Okay. Heads goes to true is look inside, but don't treat it as another piece of the expression. Just treat it as a special thing that can be looked inside, but does not otherwise. It doesn't. Its depth is irrelevant to the depth of the rest of the expression.
That makes
Right?
sense.
Yeah.
So I think those are the cases, and now the only question is what the name of the case where it's treated as the zeroth element and sort of integrated into the expression should be.
Agreed.
So our choices are things like automatic, full, all. So what's the right explanation of it? It's a case where the heads, really what it is, the heads are treated like parts of the expression. The 0th part of an expression is treated like just the first, second, third part of an expression, right? That's what it really is about. Correct?
Correct.
I mean, for some reason, the inherited comes to mind, but I don't think it's right. All is a bit confusing. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that all, I mean, this way of thinking of it, all is right. Well, the problem is the left-hand side, right? The reason I was about to gravitate towards all is because we're treating all parts sort of equally, but that doesn't make sense given that the left-hand side of the rule is heads.
Right.
So
I almost think heads goes to all makes sense for what we're calling true. Like,
yeah, we can't
find matches in all of the heads, but you're not treating the head as like part of the tree.
Okay, but what would you do to treat as part of? I mean, we could grandfather. You know, we could leave heads goes to true does what it currently does, and we could prefer heads goes to all. But I'm not sure that doesn't solve the problem of what it means to. It's basically integrate the heads. Integrate the head as a part of the expression is kind of a way to describe what we're talking about.
Brett, do you have a suggestion?
Or Roman or anybody here?
Yeah, I was just thinking as somebody who uses full and all a lot. He
yes
might have some insight. And if you're speaking, you must. Oh,
no, I'm thinking.
Okay, the other way to think about it is heads as explicit.
I mean, if we go through something, I would prefer full over all.
Yes.
You know, just because of the true false nature of the other settings. But
okay, I could imagine describing it as heads are treated in their full form somehow, saying that it's a head is treated in
as a full expression.
Yeah, perhaps. It's a little bit of a hack. Where else do we have this issue of when something is atomic versus when something is treated in its fullness, so to speak? Well, anyway, I think we've identified what the issue is. Full is a reasonable start. Maybe there's a better choice. But that seems pretty good to me.
There's a bug in the tree visualization there. That X, which is right adjacent to the other expression.
Yes, Roman.
Yeah, well, this is we know that Ian is still working on this, so there's a reason why it's only in the prototype build. Yeah, maybe we save this one for, given that we're 45 minutes over time, maybe we save this one for next time.
Well, we're only 15 minutes over time.
Whatever, we're over some time. Okay, but this particular thing.
Right, so this is basically the symbol that was, I mean, looking at the history and where it's used, it was seemed to have been added, maybe even by Roman, I think, for.
I like this symbol. I mean, I think it's a good difference from aborted. Aborted says that
right, except nothing uses it, and the things that would naturally use it are now using failure objects. So the question is,
I see.
I mean, my immediate reaction was that it must be easy to recognize a timeout, and if I have to look inside some arbitrary failure object that everybody creates a little bit differently, then how would I know that this failure is actually a timeout rather than something else?
Okay.
I think we need this in a separate meeting. Let's get a list of what things produce aborts, timed out.
You have the list there. I mean, if you open those things, right, or I guess only one of the, I guess I don't have the complete list of failure objects, but basically everything else that okay, and ping time now actually uses it, but everything else that we found is using failure objects.
I think Christopher inventoried these things for confirm. Did anybody ask him?
I don't think so. So I'll ping Devin, make sure we do that.
Yeah, sure.
And so maybe if he has something we can.
Right. I'm pretty sure he went through and figured out what functions produce what, because he's deciding what confirm should
Yeah,
do.
I mean, that first list of things that return $aborted, I mean, that is absolutely the correct thing to return because it's literally doing an abort. So
I don't think time constrained returning timeout will be the right thing to do.
Right.
I mean, and the question is, but if you say, see, some other things become exhausted, like ping time becomes exhausted and just says, I give up.
Right.
Whereas full simplify with a time constraint doesn't give up. It still returns the expression. It just hasn't simplified as much as it might have done.
Right. I mean, well, full simplify is yet another difference, right? Because there, the time constraint is how much it allows on each rule. So if the rule doesn't terminate after the time constraint, it just says, okay, ignore this rule. Let's go on to the next rule in the list.
Right.
So, all right. I think then, yeah, so we'll inventory this and then take this up in the future meeting.
Sounds good. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Stuff, guys. Thanks to folks on the live stream.